Hello and good evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this Tuesday night. Another episode of our epic podcast. We are in the company of footballing legend David Jaffrey, former player and current Ballymena United manager. And we're incredibly grateful for David joining us tonight and showcasing, sharing his time and ultimately reflecting back on what has been an incredible career and still going incredibly strong in the Irish League. Just want to thank you for your continual support as well over the last number of weeks. And as always, I would encourage you all to ping your questions in tonight, whether it's to me personally in an email, text, messenger, or on our obviously live feed tonight. Be greatly appreciated, and I will do my utmost to try and get through as many as I can. Just want to continue to thank as well David, who continues to do all our media work behind the scenes. Without David, just wouldn't be possible tonight. So just want to thank you for that, Dave. It's incredibly appreciated. So all the PDFs that you see going up on social media, it's all down to the craftsmanship, should we say, of David. So David's going to be joining us very soon, and as I said, please, I would encourage you all to ping your questions in. And just right on cue, David Jaffrey, good evening. How are you, sir?
Hello and good evening, Brian. I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much indeed for this very kind invite, and I'm looking forward to this evening.
David, it's an absolute pleasure having you on tonight. We have been absolutely blessed to have some fantastic guests over the last number of weeks. And without doubt, when we announced that David Jaffrey was coming on the podcast tonight, we have been inundated with interest. So it's a testimony to what you continue to do in local football, what you have done, and we are very, very thankful. So thank you immensely tonight.
Thank you, Brian. No, really appreciate it.
David, obviously Premier League football got the green light starting back in England in a couple of weeks. The authorities in the IFA still haven't given any sort of directive. As a current manager in the league, David, I can only imagine that must be incredibly difficult, communicating with your players, fitness levels of players, when it's starting, is it going to start? How do you manage that currently, being a manager?
Brian, that's a very good question. Certainly these are very difficult times, they're very challenging times, and I know there's a big responsibility on the decision makers up at Linfield. I think one of the first things we've got to put in context is that we're not England, we're not Germany, we're not the Premiership, whether it be in Spain or Italy. And the point that I'm making is that we don't have the vast sums of money which is available to allow those leagues to at least attempt to restart. You look at the leagues in Scotland, you look at the leagues in Wales, you look at the league in Holland and Belgium, and also the lower leagues in England, and they've all made a decision in terms of the future of the game and how to go forward. And we're a part-time league. Ostensibly, teams are beginning to push towards being more full-time. Certainly the product has got better and better. This is the most intriguing year ever. I went on record at the beginning of the season that it's a brand new landscape for Irish League football, and without any shadow of a doubt, it's the most competitive in all of the times that I can remember. It really is, and I can see the rationale, and I can see why people talk about wanting to finish the season. But I'm honestly not sure if that's viable, whether that's reasonable, or whether it's possible.
Yeah.
And while we're in this period of limbo, Brian, you certainly want to keep in contact with the players, very much with respect to their emotional and mental well-being as opposed to physical well-being, because by the very nature of furloughing, no players should be involved in any activity which would compromise their clubs. So you're wanting players to keep fit and to look after themselves, but it's more about how they are mentally and emotionally than in terms of any preparation for any return. And you have different categories of players. You have players who are coming out of contract. Our clubs in the position to resign them. You have players who are in contract. Will are clubs going to be able? There is so much, Brian. And as I say, I'm not anyway, to be critical or to be some sort of a know-it-all, but I do feel sooner rather than later we've got to sit down and say, right, this league has come to an end. I have, speaking personally, not as manager of Ballymena United, I've been very clear in saying that and of the European places, they simply go to the top 3 teams in the league, which as it stands is Linfield, Coleraine and Crusaders. That while those 3 teams, take the qualifying places for Europe, then they're not. The rest of the clubs don't get anything. That the money is that's available is shared around, and it's shared around in terms of league positions and where teams have got to. But at this moment in time, got to protect their European places. So that's why I'm suggesting the top 3 teams go across. Even though Ballymena are in the semi-final of the Irish Cup and ostensibly 2 games away from qualifying for Europe, I think you put that to an aside for one season, and we think about the integrity of the league and making sure that we protect the league for when we're able to return. You've asked about the players. You keep in contact with them as best you can, and you want to make sure that they're okay. But in terms of being able to give them some concrete information as to the way ahead, well, at this moment in time, everyone's in limbo. And as I say, you've looked to other countries, we've looked to other leagues, they've been, decisive. We can't compare ourselves to those leagues with a vast amount of money. And so I'm hoping that sooner rather than later, there is some guidance as to how we propose to proceed, rather than, putting it. It appears at times, Brian, we're putting things off. And I'm not suggesting that there isn't. I'm sure there's lots of work. In fact, I know there's lots of work being done in the background. But at some stage, we've got to say this, this isn't possible to proceed.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think we all certainly want to see football back, but like anything, there is formalities that need to be carried out, and it's certainly very challenging for managers and coaches and players and ultimately everyone involved with the football club. And it's not. I fully get that it's not easy at the IFA to make those calls. Can I just, folks, say as well, we're having slight difficulties tonight with maybe David's signal, but we'll continue to keep pressing on, and hopefully we'll be able to finish the podcast. David, I want to take you back to obviously your incredible playing career, and obviously Manchester United as a schoolboy. It must have been obviously an incredible learning curve whilst you were there, and all that brought.
It was a fantastic time, Brian, and probably, when I think about it now, I'm 57 years of age. I first went across to Manchester United when I was 14. So it was a long time ago. In fact, when I signed as a schoolboy at Manchester United, Tommy Docherty was the manager at the time. I remember the club offering me an apprenticeship and a 3-year professional. I remember in my last year in school, going across on alternate weekends to play for the Manchester United youth team. Then, as I say, becoming an apprentice, then becoming a professional, and 3 fantastic years. Wasn't all the glamour that everyone would associate with today's Premiership or football in England, or with the name of Manchester United. Clean, we had kits to sort out on top of our training, but it was good preparation for life, Brian. The first 2 years, went well. I played for the Manchester United youth team. I was in the Northern Ireland youth team. I was beginning to knock on the door of the Manchester United reserves. And then, unfortunately for me, at the end of my second year, Mr. Sexton, who was the manager at the time and who had given me the contract, left the club. Ron Atkinson came in. And as players will all tell you, the most important opinion is the opinion of the man in charge. And unfortunately, at the end of my third year at United, I was told that I wasn't good enough. And I've got to agree with that. And so I didn't have a future at Manchester United. And that was my full-time career ended. There was interest from 1 or 2 other clubs at the time. But at that stage, Brian, had a decent sort of early years here at Manchester. It ended disappointingly. And I returned back home. But I would never swap in any way the experience and the enjoyment that I had being there. I can say that I was a player for Manchester United. I still have my club blazer. Would you believe?
Brilliant.
Although I can assure you, Brian, it no longer fits me.
No, well, look, there's not many kids get the opportunity going over at such a young age to such a huge club, David, and I'm sure the experience certainly set you in fantastic stead. And you know, obviously you come back and, you know, Linfield as a player under Roy Coyle, you know, the squad that you just had and the titles that you just won and everything that you know, obviously you achieved there. David, under what must have been an incredible group of guys and an incredibly strong dressing rooms year on year in, obviously 10 years, you know what I mean, influential captain, you know, you must look back on that and at a time where we're just dominating local football.
When I came home, I remember, Brian, you know, I had 2 or 3 clubs who were, you know, were presenting and asking about me signing for them. I'll not bore anybody with a very long story, but I eventually was at Linfield and played. Roy Coyle signed me. At that stage, they were a colossal side in the change room. You had the likes of Peter Rafferty, you had Lindsay McKeown, you had Trevor Anderson, you had Stephen McKee, you had Billy Murray, you had John Garrett, you had Gary McCartney, you had Colin Crawford. You know, I could go on and on. Martin McGackey. You had some unbelievable players. Roy Coyle himself. You know, people used to say, "Oh, who needed a manager?" Of course, you needed a manager. And Roy Coyle's great strength was player identification, and he brought a group of players together and continued to every single week set standards, set you know, expectations. And I was very fortunate to be part of that Linfield team that won 6 league titles in the trot. I wasn't there for the first one of the 6, but I was there for the next 5, and they were certainly a phenomenal team who just didn't know when they were beaten. And as you said, they were a very, very strong change room. When you think of the likes of George Dunlop, you know, I signed in 1982, and George was just returning from the successful World Cup that Northern Ireland had in Spain. And when you're coming off the back of that, and George being one of many characters, it certainly was a tremendous period. And thankfully, during that time, we won a lot of trophies under Roy Coyle. Ironically, during my 10 years at the club, I never won an Irish Cup, and I never won a double. But we were able to win, as I say, a number of other trophies during that period.
Very much so. Ian's texting in tonight, David. Ian, thanks for texting in. Hey, David, a football legend in our wee country. Thank you for the memories at Windsor Park. As a manager and having worked under Roy Coyle's influence, did that in any way influence your own managerial style when you crossed the divide of becoming a manager? Thank you for that, Ian.
That's a good question, Brian. I think you learn from every manager, you know. And I go back to Dave Sexton, who was, you know, very softly spoken man, who was a tremendous coach, but always had time for everybody. I learned from Ron Atkinson how not to release players. You know, I was a young lad at 19, and my world was taken away from me very quickly. And while I wasn't afraid of hearing the truth, what I did learn is that there's a way to give difficult information to players. Roy Coyle was a first-class coach, but he also was very single-minded and how he managed. And he had his own style, and there was parts of his management which I thought, yep, that will fit into I would like to manage. Paul Malone, who was the manager at Ards when I went there, I learned a lot from Paul also. And also at my time at Larne as player assistant manager with Shay Hamill, God rest Shay, since passed and gone, but I learned from Shay also. So you're learning from all of the managers, and you try to the bits that you want, and you add those together with your own ingredients, Brian, and as I say, then you set out on your own managerial journey, so to speak. But you're always learning. But it would be fair that good and bad, you learn from other managers, and you take that as part of your management education.
Yeah, Gareth Clem, thanks for texting tonight, a man you know well, David. Hi, David. You brought the curtain down on your illustrious playing career and started your coaching journey, obviously at Lauren. How did that come about, and what was it like working with Big Shay, a teacher of mine and someone I looked up to from a very young age? Thank you for that, Gareth, tonight.
That's a brilliant question, Gareth, and I don't really get to tell this story too often. When I left Linfield and joined Ards, it was, as I say, with Paul Malone, and during that time, Jimmy Brown had left Ards and gone on to manage Ballyclare. Paul Malone made me player coach. To be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of duties for me because Paul was very much his own man and how he did things. But at least he introduced me into the backroom sort of staff part of things, and I will be forever grateful to Paul for that. At the end or in the middle of my third year at Ards, competition was pretty fierce playing as I thought I should have done. And at that stage, my mind began very much just towards, well, what am I going to do at the end of my playing career? I had already taken back then it was your grade 1 badge. There was actually two badges at that time, and I'd taken both of those. And so I'd started, my coaching education, and it so happened that I thought I would maybe test the water to see, how Ards on my future, and I submitted a transfer request. And Roy agreed to that request, and I thought, right, that's fine. And I was in the game long enough to understand what was going on. And I was contacted then by Johnny Black, who was the then chairman of Larne, and he asked about, what was I wanting to do in terms of playing, and I still very much wanted to continue playing, but I also was clear that I wanted to begin my education with regards to management. I wanted to be involved in player identification, in terms of signing players, in terms of budget man, in terms of training. I wanted to begin to learn all of those aspects. And it transpired then at that stage that Shay Hamill got the post at Larne, and I joined Shay. And I can tell you, Gareth, and I'm going to say this because obviously Shay was your school teacher, what an absolute gentleman. A lovely, lovely, dear, gentle gentleman. A man who I will be forever grateful to, because he was very much the boss. I remember on one period where we went through a run of games, and he got a manager of the month award, but insisted that I be there with him at his award. And I thought that was a lovely gesture. And he was very much about partnership. But he gave me my head. He gave me my head in training. He gave me my head in some difficult decisions that had to be taken with regards to players. As I said, he was always the boss. He always had the final say. But in terms of working partnership and sharing out the duties, then Shay was very kind in doing that. And I will always be grateful to Shay Hamill and Larne Football Club, because in terms of my managerial education, that's where it began. And a tremendous time that I had there, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I say, in terms of helping me build a good foundation to going forward, I can only thank Shay and Larne Football Club.
Powerful, fantastic story, David. Warren Patton, thanks for texting tonight. I was talking to Warren last week, actually. We'll never forget you signing for Ards, David. So thank you for that, and no doubt you have very fond memories, I'm sure, David, at Castlereagh Park.
Oh, Brad, I can't let Warren go. In terms of how do you say this? I had great times at Linfield. Thoroughly enjoyed my time. Obviously, I was there for 10 years. I was captain of the club, I think, for 7, maybe 8 of those years. We were very successful. Roy Coyle had left, and I think it was 89-90 season, or was it 1991? Eric Boyer came in, and I was another year of my contract still to go. But it was clear, and again, you understand, Eric had plans, in terms of the players that were there. Jeff Spears was there, John McConnell was there, Jason Allen were there. They were much younger centre backs than myself, and understandably, when I went to see Eric says, well, you mightn't get as much game time, and he gave me his explanation. So it happened that Linfield were interested in Robert Campbell, and I was the make weight, so to speak. Robert left Ards, went to Linfield, and I went the other direction and joined Ards and joined Paul Malone, and had a fantastic, phenomenal time. Maybe a little known fact is that I was actually born in Ards on the 28th of October 1962. So we're looking back on it now. It's lovely to have played for and represented the town of my birth. Fantastic time at Ards. The people were phenomenal. I remember that first year, we actually were fourth in the league. We got to the Irish final. We had that dreadful trilogy of finals against Bangor.
Remember it well.
I remember in the first final we were minutes away before they equalised it. But after that, then Paul moved on. Roy came in, and I remember being part of the Ards team that won the County Antrim Shield. I think it was against Crusaders. That was the first trophy that Ards had got in 20 odd years, and that was a game. It was nice to be part of that history. But I'll be forever grateful for Ards, because I got, as I say, Paul Malone, player coach, and I got some experience there. But the Ards people and the Ards supporters were absolutely phenomenal. And I remember during that period, Brian, like myself, were follically challenged. It was I went from being a blonde bombshell at Linfield with long flowing locks to being a baldy bombshell. I remember finishing off my Ards career having a shaven head.
I used to wear the blonde mullet. Now, to be fair, David, using my wife's GHD, so I don't know if you had the same issue, mate. But but no, all behind us now, mate.
That was a great goal.
I tell you, the Loughgall team we played in back in the day, I think it was 6 of us all using our Mrs. GHDs. But all these blonde mullets running about. But it seemed like a good idea at the time. I tell you, Jimmy Gardner had plenty to say about it. But obviously, Dave, we'll take this one. Obviously, like many ladies in the game, they have to put up with many football obsessed men. Danielle Madole has texted in tonight. How does your good lady put up with your football obsessive ways, Mr. Jeffrey?
I would probably say, no, Miss McDowell, I know her. She is fanatical about football. A most accomplished coach, a most accomplished player, and someone I know extremely, extremely well. So the good lady in my life likes football as much as Danielle. Rose goes to all the games. She is as great interest in it as I have. She shares the highs, she shares the lows. And I am truly blessed to have such a supportive lady in my life when it comes to the football. An extremely good question, Daniela.
Thank you, Danielle, for texting tonight. David, obviously, you know what I mean. I've followed your career very closely. You know what I mean. I'm blessed to play against some of your teams back in the day as well. But you touched something there about Roy Coyle and the influence that he had, obviously, in terms of bringing players together. And like any manager, yes, you're probably only as good as what the 11 that you have on the grass. I get that, but ultimately as well, it takes a very articulate individual to mold that group together. The desire and the hunger and the passion. That I speak to many ex-players that have played for you, David. Creating an environment in a dressing room and man management was clearly something that David Jeffrey did and still does have. It comes very easily to you.
Well, Brian, thank you, and the players who I've had the privilege of and the blessing of working with have helped me along the way. I suppose, Brian, I came home from Manchester United. I wasn't sure what way I was going to do by way of a proper job, so to speak. And I trained as a youth and community worker, and I worked out in New Mossley Presbyterian Church in what was pretty groundbreaking days with regards to the type of youth work. We still had the uniformed organisations, GB, BB, and what have you. But we wanted to reach out to those young people who maybe going to church wasn't, a regular occurrence. And that journey, I worked there for 10 years. I then went back and did social work training. And I now work with older people, and I'm a senior social worker down in Larne. I work with older people and people with a physical disability who have got complex health needs. And I suppose in my head, Brian, I'll get to the point of this. I wanted to work with and seek to serve other people. And I see one of the big jobs of a manager is actually serving your players and is making sure that you're helping them get the best out of themselves. And I would like to think that I would manage with the players thinking head on, so to speak, on occasions, or certainly one aspect of that. I talked about the experience about, Ron Atkinson. And at that stage, he had information to give. And I gave that information, and it was the correct information to give. Don't make any bones about it. But it's how it was delivered. And so to me, it's how you look after people, how you treat people, how you get the best out of people, Brian. Because ultimately, as a manager, that's what you want to do. You want to help your players be the very best they can be. And yet you want to set them standards. You want to give them expectations. You want them to be successful. You've got to give them a structure in which to play. But you've also got to let them know that they're not just footballers. They're not just pieces of meat, Brian. That, they're people also who have got families outside of football. They're either husbands or boyfriends. There could be fathers, their sons, to their parents. And you've got to take them very much in a holistic way. And while ultimately, it's very much, about the business side of things. It's what you do on a Saturday that counts, that we are a results-driven business, and make no doubt about that. But you've got to create, an environment, and you've got to create a culture, Brian, where players can give of their best. I see Brian McLaughlin, we work very much in a way, and if you partnership it, they have a collective impact, and it's about taking care. I have a very basic way of saying this, Brian. To the social workers in my social work team, I would say to them, look after your clients, look after your families, you look after them, and I'll look after you, and in the round we'll look after each other. And it's just the footballers, I would say to the boys, go out and look out, you look after things on the pitch today. And if you look after things off the pitch, I'll look after things off the pitch, and we'll look after each other. And that's what it's about. Yes, we want to win. Yes, you need to be ambitious. Yes, you need to have a hunger. You need to have an insatiable appetite. You need to be absolutely real to yourselves. It's not just about talking the talk, Brian. You've got to walk the walk. But it's about working in partnership with your players. It's serving them as best you can, and hopefully, by doing that, then they will be rewarded, and the club will be rewarded. Supporters are rewarded, and the manager and coaching staff are rewarded.
Yeah. No, absolutely fantastic. Absolutely so engaging, David. Just listen to you. Marty, Hannah, thanks for texting tonight. David, who was the best player you've managed when you were the Linfield manager? And ultimately, you've managed an incredible array of talent. So I understand that it might be difficult to single anyone out in the group over the decade you were there. 17 years.
That's a fantastic question, Marty, and one I'm going to find really difficult to answer, but I'm not going to sit on the fence. What I'm going to do is I'll tell you the player who made the biggest difference in terms of the success that we had at Linfield. When Brian and I, first went in, and it's now, people would say that we had loads of money, and if Linfield didn't have money, the Queen had no soldiers, and all sorts of analogies like that. But it's now documented. It's in the public domain that when Brian and I came in, the club financially, had tried to compete and didn't maybe have as much as they would have had previously. And it was very much about trying to put together a squad and instill that will to win, the culture that I talked about. And for our first 2 full seasons, we came second. We came second in the league to Cliftonville. We came second in the league to Glentoran. And at least we got Linfield, back into Europe and getting some European monies. However, we knew that we were something missing, and we needed that one player to make us from a good team into a great team. Now, there's no such thing as a one-man team, absolutely not. But there is, a lot to be said about one man can make a team. And we, Brian and I set our targets on Glenn Ferguson. Glenn was 29 at the time. He was playing at Glenavon. Phenomenal player, was very much, in his prime. And I really felt that if we were able to, we at the time being Linfield, if we were able to secure Glenn signing, then that would be the piece of the jigsaw. Glenn was under contract. Nigel Best was the manager down at Glenavon, and we made an approach about Glenn's availability. Fast forward the story. As I said, Linfield didn't have the cash reserves at that stage to be able to go and buy Glenn. And I remember the night at Windsor Park, and we had the Linfield European Supporters Club set up for Linfield supporters to go to support Linfield in Europe. And because Linfield hadn't been in Europe for a number of years, they had cash reserves built up, so to speak. And I remember, saying to them, you've seen us come close on 2 occasions. We've been second and second. I said, I can't guarantee you that by signing Glenn, we will win the league. But, we will certainly be closer again. I said, there's no guarantees in football, but can you help the club out? And I remember meeting the officers and members of the I think it was actually the officers of the first European Linfield Supporters Club. They agreed to loan Linfield the money, which allowed Linfield then to make a bid of £55,000. Linfield were able to agree with Glenavon, and Glenn then kindly agreed to come to Windsor Park and to Linfield Football Club. People thought that I was mad, that Linfield were mad. Who were signing someone at 29? How many years we are going to get out of them? I couldn't answer that, but I knew we had a quality player who could make the difference. So there's lots and lots of good players, and in terms of trying to put one in the category, who was the best? Impossible to do. But who was the player who made the difference? That was Glenn Ferguson.
Mm-hmm. No, and I certainly remember the time that Spike went across to Windsor, you know what I mean? And I think through testimony to you, David, did you seen that at the age that Spike was, and ultimately to manage him and the return that he had with Linfield is a testimony to what you got out of him and ultimately how you managed him, because it's and as incredible as front man as he is, I think like any player, they need nurtured and they need managed right. So there's no doubt about it. Glenn Ferguson was, and for me, probably the best ever striker to, in my generation growing up. I've certainly been going in and out of Irish League games. So, and I've got to know him very well over the last number of years, and absolute gentleman as well. So, we'll take this one here, David. Obviously, John is texting, and you touched a wee bit in terms of having the rapport within a football club and the rapport with the fans. John is texting tonight. Said, David, your relationship with the Linfield fans was special. And no doubt Ballymena fans are seeing that as well. And he always had the ability of making the fans feel so part of what was evolving on the pitch. You feel that the game has lost a little bit of that and possibly a disconnection with supporters?
That's a really good question. I'll speak for myself, Brian. I always had an appreciation of supporters, and I always had a realization that players will come and go, managers, coaches will come and go, boards will come and go, chairmen will come and go. But what remains a consistent and a constant are the supporters. And you sometimes really appreciate, you don't fully appreciate what a difference they can make. I'll give you an example. 2005, Lynn went to play Sharon. The week after, we have been beaten to the league by Glentoran and what is known as Morgan Day. We had to go back across after that Saturday to play Glentoran to make sure we win a game, to top the group, to get ourselves down into the Santana Cup final. Now, the crowd that night at the Oval, the size of the support was nowhere near what usually would have gone to a Big Two game. There was obviously a lot of Linfield players who were bitterly disappointed in not winning the league, and they didn't want to go across to the Oval and have basically Glentoran rub their noses in it. But you have that hardcore of support who are always there. And I think that on that evening, Linfield ended up winning 4-2. We played particularly well. That victory was as much down to supporters and the encouragement and to that group of supporters that were there that night. I'll fast forward it down to Shelburne. No one gave us a pup's chance of winning that game. There was 2,000 at least Linfield supporters went down. Again, we were on a hiding to nothing. But they went down in such numbers with such belief, which gave me that additional belief. I think maybe Brian McLaughlin and I were the only two people who thought we could actually go to Dublin and win. I really believe we could. But if anything concreted or supported that opinion, which helped me then obviously communicate that to the players, it was the supporters. And they have always been a big point. When I stepped down from Linfield and took a couple of years out working for the Sunday Life and BBC and various bits and pieces, you got to appreciate supporters even more. Brian and I have gone to Ballymena. Again, you've tried to build that rapport and build that understanding and understand the appreciation that supporters give. I'm going to say something here, and this is me being truly honest, because if I'm asked the question, then I've got to answer it honestly. The players are between managers and supporters, and players and supporters gone a little bit. And I've got to say, yes, it has. And I'll tell you the reason why. Social media. It's great to be encouraged. It's great to have those words of when people are on event or spleen, and we hear the terminology, keyboard warriors. And I'll tell you what, if anyone who criticizes players, thinks that that's actually helping players or the management, they have another thing coming. Now, criticism has been part and parcel of football, whether it's at Linfield when I managed there or whether at Ballymena. And there's nothing wrong, by the way. I'm not a shrinking violet. I have no difficulty people having a go and being critical, and that is part and parcel of the game. But I do think that the written word, the things that go on social media, people then, building their own persona up, it doesn't matter who or what you are. You can say, oh, that's just somebody, mouthing off on social media. People should remember the power of the written word. And when you have something which is derogatory or not complimentary or hurtful or abusive, then that can be difficult to take. For me, my journey has been, there will be those supporters who, are they worth it? Are they worth getting bothered about? No. Thankfully, the good supporters, by and large, outweigh those who are negative, who are hurtful, who are. And for that, I would hope that I have continued to have the relationship with the Linfield supporters. I would like to think I have a good relationship with the Ballymena United supporters. I know not everyone at Linfield during my tenure supported me. That's fine. That's part and parcel of life. I know there will be those at Ballymena who will not always support me, and that's fine also. But what I try and do is concentrate on those who are supportive, who do help you, who do encourage you. And what I can say is, whether it was a player at Linfield or a player at Ards or a player at Larne, manager at Linfield or a manager at Ballymena United, I'll promise you this: encouragement goes a long way. It goes an awful long way, and people should think about that in the round. And thankfully, in all of those clubs that I've mentioned, but Linfield and Ballymena United, in terms of supporters, and there's been so many good folk, and you take the time and you simply return what they invest in you, and how they support you, and how they help you. So yes, things have changed, but hopefully not so much, Brian, that relationship, because I've said about wanting the players to believe and to be a part of something, and to have that desire to do their best and be the best they can be. They have got to, understand, as I said, I tried to manage players with a player's, perspective. As a manager and a player, you've got to try and perform and produce from a supporter's perspective. And you want to try and give them as much enjoyment and as much happiness and as much joy as you possibly can. So if you think about those things, then hopefully the relationships that between managers and supporters, and coaches and supporters, and players and supporters will continue.
Yeah, I think it's just a common theme at the minute, though, David, and football management in general. You're seeing managers getting sacked after 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and I look back at the longevity of that you stayed at Windsor Park, the incredible amount of success that you had at Windsor Park, and maybe yes, one season you maybe didn't win the league, but you respond the next season and you go and you maybe win a double. That's. Yes, whilst you're only as good as the 11 you have, players need leadership, and to have that leadership and continually saying, look, I'm going to take what the South Stand's going to fire at me here. Players buy into that, and they clearly did. And that's one thing where, following your career closely was evident to me looking on at David Jaffrey. Not only the winning mentality that you had, but you were looking after your players, and you were backing what you had, and ultimately you had the incredible success that you had. Relentless success.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's very kind. I think the one thing, Brian, certainly Brian McLaughlin and I very hard, together, and we tried to set that standard, and we tried to make sure that we give of our best to the players. We tried to support them as best as we could, and do as much as we possibly could for them. The reality is that when they cross the line, it's down to them. Mm-hmm. And Brian McLaughlin and I were blessed with some fantastic players, fantastic characters, and who, a lot of whom have now gone from being ex-players to being friends, and some of them very close family friends. So in that way, Brian and I were truly blessed.
Yeah. Just touching on Brian there before we bounce on to Johnny Watson's question here, David. We had Steve McLaren on the other week, and he said during his time at Manchester United, Sir Alex didn't get involved in the sessions. He was on the pitch, he was overseeing everything. In terms of yourself, I've always been intrigued in terms of David Jaffrey's foresight. Obviously, Mr. McLaughlin, I'm sure there's a lot of coaching. Is that something that you get involved as well with the sessions, or have you always very much let your coaches coach and you oversee it, or do you step in as well at times, David, and actually physically take part of the session?
It's funny, and you said, because actually my time at Linfield was manager stroke head coach. I saw management as an integral part, obviously, but coaching also. And as I said to you, when I joined Ards back in '92, I'd already started on my coaching education with the IFA. Went on to get my European A badge, and then ultimately my a pro badge. And I would see coaching as an integral part. Now, you can't do everything, and you can't be all things to all people. And it's important. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. at Linfield, Brian and I would have liked those when we wanted to go 3 nights a week. Brian, he was working full time. Every other week I was at a board meeting or team committee meeting, so we had to bring another person to share that load. Alfie Wiley joined us. So the coaching duties were shared out, but it wasn't a matter of just standing back and let others do it. I would see myself as very proactive with regards to the coaching. Since Brian and I gone to Ballymena, we have stuck just with the pair of us, and we share coaching duties. That's not to say that as we go forward, because we're always reviewing our own performance. We're always reviewing what we can give in the pitch. We talk about making things better. There may be a time when we think, well, maybe a new voice has got to come in. Maybe somebody can add something that we aren't able to deliver. I'll give you an example, Brian. We are blessed with a young lady called Julie Alexander has joined our backroom staff in terms of strengthening and conditioning. And it's funny, some of the things that we would do naturally and normally, but not really, we would subconsciously, let's suppose the word, we would do things because we know they're the right things, but we're not exactly sure why they are the right things. Mm-hmm. Julian joined us, I think it's now 2 years, and we've already given up a part of a piece of work which Brad and I would have usually done over to Julie, who then ties in with David Douglas, who does our performance analysis, who ties in them with Gary Crosby as our physiotherapist. So during this last couple of years, while we've always had other support staff, we have changed things in terms of our role, and we have given things up. And we'll continue to look at that. I think what you've got to do, Brian, is look at your own ability. You've got to look at your own skills. You've got to look what you can bring to in the training pitch, because ultimately it's what happens on a Saturday. But what happens on a Saturday is very, very much influenced by what goes on through the week. So Brian and I will continue to look at how we do things. But I would see myself and as being very proactive on the coaching field. But as things were when it was with Shay Hamill, you work in partnership with other people. But the big change for us was bringing Julie Alexander in, and we've been really, really fortunate and blessed with bringing in terms of her insight and expertise and help.
David, I'm conscious just of the time. I literally could talk to you all night here. Literally, it's just been absolutely fascinating listening to you. We'll take this one off Johnny Watson. Thanks for texting tonight, Johnny. David, as a player manager, what's been the most memorable experience in your career to date?
Oh, crikey. If you can allow me.
We need a week to answer that one, do you? There's been quite a few, to be fair.
If you can allow me 3, the winning of the Santanta Cup is absolutely massive, simply because it was the inaugural year. It was the first year Santanta Cup was going. No one believed that we could ever win down there, and that was fantastic. The second one off has got to be the Irish Cup win over Glentoran to win the clean sweep. And I'm not saying that because it was Glentoran, obviously the greatest rivals, but it was the fact I don't think Linfield had beaten Glentoran in something like 50 years in the Irish Cup, something ridiculous. And we were beating, Linfield, or beating sort of Glentoran to win the sweep, which again was phenomenal. But I've got to say, right up there was this year's victory in Europe with Ballymena United. They get Ballymena United through to a second round in Europe, which had never been done before. At teams, at Linfield, there's some expectation and not the full appreciation of sometimes of what you achieve. I'd like to think when people look back at the Santanta and the clean sweep and I think the 6 doubles in 7 years, and say, well, they did okay. But to go and then to get Ballymena through for a second time in 4 years and into Europe, and then to progress into the second round is right up there as well. So phenomenal. From a playing point of view, one very, very simple, easy one. It was away back in 1984. It was Linfield against Shamrock Rovers away from home. We had drawn 0 each in the first leg of the European game. No one fancied Linfield going down to Dublin. Our supporters were banned. And I scored the goal that eventually led us to getting a draw with Shamrock Rovers. We went through on the away goals. We played Panathinaikos in the next round. Everyone knows about that. And I'll let you into a secret, Brian. That particular day, I struck the ball from the edge of the penalty box and the ball flew in. But I actually at that stage wasn't aiming to make the shot. I was looking to crack their centre half who had hit me earlier in the game with his elbow in a uncompromising way. So I saw my opportunity to put him, ball and everything else in the back of the net. I struck the ball first. He jumped out of the road and I ran down the pitch celebrating like a good one to the group of about 150 blue men who dear knows how they ever got in, but they followed Linfield faithfully down.
Powerful, David. That's incredible stories. You know what I mean? As
a player, 1940 against the next round of the year.
Absolutely fantastic, David, both as manager and as player, and to have those memories and the achievements is absolutely fantastic. David, I just want to thank you immensely for your time tonight. I want to wish you continued success at Ballymena. What you've done, and I want you to hear me. What you've done on local football here and continue to do is just remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And the amount of texts that are flooding into my phone that from all football fans just saying Big Davy legend. And I just want to thank you as well on behalf of Experience Epic for your time tonight. And it's massively appreciated, David. And we'll stay in touch, and I wish you every success, bro.
Brian, can I say thank you to you? Thank you to David for setting us up. Those who know me well know that technically I'm not very well averse to all of what this is. But thank you very much indeed, and for the time to listen and to ask the questions. Thank you so very much indeed. And in terms of these unprecedented times, in terms of these difficult times, let's make sure we keep safe. We look after each other. We look after ourselves so we can look after each other. Well, thank you very much indeed. Take care and God bless.
David, thank you very much indeed. Chat to you soon. God bless you, pal. Folks, thank you so much indeed for watching. If you've missed any of our podcasts, head over to YouTube channel and subscribe. Again, apologies for the sound quality in tonight's show. To be honest, pre-show, we maybe didn't think it was going to happen. It was difficult with a Wi-Fi connection, but we got through 54 minutes, and how incredibly engaging it was. Listen to David, and I wish him continued success. Thank you very much indeed. We're back next week. And thank you for your support tonight, and your texts and your emails. It's all been popping in. I've done my best to try and get through as many as I can. Take care. God bless. See you soon.